Thank you for joining today's solution showcase. We're going to go over the updates that have been happening to Veeam Data Cloud just here in 2026. My name is Corinne Bissett. I'm a technologist here at Veeam Software. I've been here for quite some time, and I'm also a Microsoft MVP. I'm really excited to get in here. It's going to feel a little bit like a rapid fire as things are coming along. I do want to point everyone to the questions box. You should see this on your webinar panel. It looks like a little chat window with a question mark on it. If you have any questions as we go along, I will be taking those questions live at the end. If I don't have the answers or we run out of time, I will make sure someone gets back with you and does a follow-up. So to kick it off here, let's take a look at our agenda. So we'll start off with kind of the landscape around the environments that we protect with Veeam Data Cloud. We'll hop into the rapid fire of all of the features that are, one, already out, and two, just right around the corner here. And then we'll do a little bit of a sneak peek about what's coming. And of course, I got demos lined up. I got my lab ready up here, and we'll be taking a double click and live view of the architecture. But I do want to start off here because we get the question often is, okay, well, why Veeam? And really, it's because we protect more users than any other backup vendor out on the market. There is no third-party backup vendor that protects more Microsoft 365 users. This copies and pastes across a lot of our platforms. We are one of the #1 deployed out there in the marketplace because really it just kind of works. So let's take a look at the landscape itself. Now, this is a really scary number, and this was actually announced not too long ago by Microsoft themselves that over 600 million attacks to Entra ID and identity-based attacks every single day. And that comes back to that entire scenario that you don't get 100 chances to make sure you're protecting your environment and that you have that resiliency built in, because these attackers just have to get that one time right. And all of a sudden, your entire organization is compromised. And I think one of my favorite quotes around this, that attackers don't break in anymore. They log in. They use the credentials that they've been able to scalp and find and be able to cross pivot throughout your entire organization. So this is what we built the Veeam Data Cloud on top of, is making sure that you have the protection that is comparable to the types of solutions that you have in your ecosystem. So what I mean by this is that with all of these identity-based attacks, Entra ID and your identity providers are a key point. You have to know what's there, what has changed, and you have to know it very quickly. One of the features I will cover and just kind of give you a quick view of what it looks like is our compare with production feature. This allows you to take any point in time of your backup and all of the attributes associated with your users, your groups, your roles, conditional access policies, you name it, and compare that to what it looks like in your production environment today. This gives you a key indicator as to exactly when something changed and what changed within those roles, so you can make a quick pivot as to what you may need to do to kind of roll back those changes, track down users, or maybe there's a policy in place that just might have been a legacy policy that didn't get updated in the right places. And this can help you lessen the impact of these types of attacks. The other point I want to kind of pull in here is the immutability and service level immutability that we have within the platform. So whenever you store backups into the Veeam Data Cloud, there is no way from an end user perspective whatsoever to be able to delete these on the back end. This creates you a resiliency aspect that is outside of your current domain, which is really important because you get one compromised account, you get one compromised user, you have a couple privileges change, and all of a sudden the keys of the kingdom are pretty much open, and you're open to all of these other types of problems. Now, when it comes to thinking about the type of coverage that you need in a modern ecosystem, we have to think about the cloud aspect. This environment is far different, but also sort of the same as what you have on your on-premises environment. We send our data to another data entity, and we expect this data to sort of be protected within here without any type of extra keys or things like that on that end. But when we start to think about the reality as a whole, this SaaS data platform has an incredible infrastructure. It has incredible networking, and it has incredible availability. But anyone that walks through that front door, and as I was saying, 600 million attempts on identity attacks are done daily against these kinds of environments. Anyone that comes through the front door and modifies that data isn't liable from the third-party cloud provider. That's when you start to think about what you need to do to kind of bridge the gap versus the cloud coverage versus cloud reality. And it's not really anyone's fault. It's not necessarily, okay, one cloud vendor is better than another cloud vendor. What it really comes down to is that there needs to be an extra level of expertise when it comes to these platforms. And the extra level of expertise is almost impossible. You don't see Microsoft only shops or any only shops anymore. You see some of this, some of that, and whatever made sense to that situation in that time. You have this data over here on Salesforce. You have this data over here on Entra ID. You have a little bit of GCP in there. You have to have something that can help you bridge the gap between these different entities to a single type of portal. And that's what we're able to do with the Veeam Data Cloud. You can't expect your admins to have 100% accuracy, especially when they're covering all of these different clouds. And this really starts to weave together the connective tissue when you think about it within even just the Microsoft platform. So Microsoft has layers, and we're going to talk about a couple of those today, but what we're seeing right now is, say, Azure. Azure doesn't just sit on its own. It's connected into an Entra ID basis to authenticate to the machines, to the portals, to the permissions, to the data. Then through those identities, you also have the back-end orchestration that happens with Microsoft 365. So your emails, your SharePoint, your communication, your collaboration, where the money and the deals are made. These are all kind of woven in together, and then you step even further. How do you process that? Well, you have something like Salesforce. Salesforce has your leads, your opportunities, and these really kind of all come into a bigger picture. The current platform offering for the Veeam Data Cloud includes all of these, and we also have something called our Vault, which is Veeam Vault. The Veeam Vault is a storage solution that allows you to take your on-premises footprint for backups and tier them off to a cloud storage that we help you secure. And the security behind this is security by default. We will not let you send backups to us without first encrypting it with a key that you make and you hold, and password you make and you hold. And they require this to be within that security level without letting you send data. So let's dive into some of the features and enhancements that have come down the line. And the first thing I want to talk about is bring your own key encryption. So this is huge when it comes to taking back ownership and maintaining compliance of your data, especially when you're talking about, say, European regions and GDPR. We've seen some news lately about large providers stating that they cannot guarantee that your data won't be exposed or given to another government or another agency. This type of exposure is not tolerated in a lot of compliance scenarios. What Bring Your Own Key allows you to do is encrypt the data that lives on the Veeam Data Cloud with your own key. So we cannot access the data. No third party, no government can access the data. The only people that can access the data is you. And to the point and the extent of the matter, if you lose the key, you can't even access the data, which is really important for this type of compliance and protection when it comes to gaining back the control in any software as a service scenario. Another one I want to talk about here is with the Vault, which I was explaining earlier to do with our backup storage side. We originally started with the Azure ecosystem. The Azure ecosystem has now expanded to AWS. So we're able to provide some type of redundancy, which becomes really interesting when you're not maybe a Microsoft only shop, but you're a Microsoft mostly shop. And you have the Azure, you have the Entra ID of the Microsoft 365. This allows you to create some redundancy across the platform without having to think about where you're sending the data and what structure does it need to go in. How do I protect AWS? I don't know if you've been in one platform cloud or the other. It is drastically different. I have to manage all 3 of the major cloud providers for my team, and I'm Googling docs just about every time I'm getting in there because they're so drastically different. Now, private endpoints gives us another point of control. And if you notice here, a lot of these are kind of just rolling back and continuing and doubling down on control of your data while minimizing the stress and footprint that you have to worry about within your ecosystem and planning for resiliency. So the private endpoint allows you to have an on-premises connector that connects you up to the data cloud, which limits the attack surface. So you're not just going over any line into the cloud, but you're going over a dedicated circuit, dedicated encryption standards, and you can also have dedicated speeds to these types of entities that you negotiate with your cloud provider for these private endpoints. So you can worry about the things you really want to do, like your next deployment project. You're not worrying about the speed and getting things back up and running as they are. Now, personally, I actually want to double click on this because it's one of my favorite features, and I'm going to get a little nerdy here. The advanced threat detection is an anomaly machine learning algorithm that we've developed in-house that backs off of the random forest tree cuts algorithm. And what it does is it takes the data on not just the individual user, but it even breaks it down into the type of data living inside of the OneDrive, the Outlook, or inside of Teams, all of these different data points and SharePoints, and it gets a profile over time. So it understands how this data is supposed to look, it understands how this data moves through its changes, and this includes anytime that there's encryption involved. Once we get a profile of what that data looks like, we have an algorithm that detects the anomaly changes. And if you know anything about machine learning, we can go on days and days about generative AI, but machine learning is built and almost like it was purpose built for the anomaly detection type of architecture. And this is a look at a visual representation of how it works when we're orchestrating this in the back end. So the blue dots are different files, and you can actually even see the different files, like it's a doc and it's an Excel and it's a PowerPoint. So you can see these are very different data types and they have very different views. So there is no one singular view of how this data structure looks, but we learn what that individual data file is supposed to look like. And you can see whenever you have an attack, and in this case, this is a Bad Rabbit ransomware attack, the red dots are showing us how that file is now compromised. And we can immediately pick this up. And from the Veeam Data Console, once you log in, you simply have to go to the Microsoft 365 side. And we'll take a quick look here and let this run. Now, this platform is pretty seamless across the board. So if you're going into Microsoft 365, Azure, Entra, these consoles all look the same. But double-clicking in the Microsoft 365 platform side, we're looking at the malware detected threats. So not only do we use this algorithm to detect whenever you might be having something going on with the ransomware side of the house and give you an expert of what types of files that we're detecting within this encrypted data files, but we have other types of known signatures and things like that that allows us to know and what to look out for. Let's move right along because I want to leave myself more time to give you some live demos of what's coming in the architecture. So Azure enhancements. We have the Cosmos database, and this is a really strategic play because a lot of things that run on like an IoT or systems in your architecture that feed back to, say, Azure, run off of Cosmos DB because of the type of database structure. We now include that so you're able to integrate not only with the Azure SQL, but you have integrations with the Cosmos database side. Microsoft Planner is another heavy hitter. It's really become a big collaboration point in the Microsoft 365 ecosystem between SharePoint and Teams and getting all of the users on the right page. Losing data here, there is no way to get it back. I know because I use Planner on my team, and if I hit the delete button, it is gone and I'm not able to get it back. So this is a really nice coverage point that we'll be offering in here. Now, Salesforce. Salesforce is a huge ecosystem as it is. Expecting users to be able to understand the Salesforce side of the house and having to understand a third-party enhancement tool to get data back into that ecosystem can sometimes be a learning curve. But what we've deployed in the most current versions, a couple months ago in this case, is an extension. And it's the first of the kind for this platform, but I'm hoping more to come. And what we do is deploy directly from the Salesforce interface itself. And we use the Veeam Data Cloud plugin within that ecosystem to allow you, just beside your cases, see this archived here. So why does this matter? Well, for a couple of reasons. First of all, cloud is not getting cheaper. Cloud is not a charity. So between Microsoft 365, SharePoint, your OneDrives, and now Salesforce is increasing the cost that it is for data living in that ecosystem. And some of them are lessening what you can have by default, or they're just straight out sending you a larger bill. So what we're going to do is start archiving that data off to third-party platforms that offer us a much cheaper price. And that's what the Salesforce extension allows you to archive the data to the Veeam Data Cloud while still maintaining the apps and the ecosystem on this side. Last is a little bit of love to our federal side. We are FedRAMP authorized, so if you do have any questions about that, we definitely get into a big conversation. Last, before I get into the reason we're all here, which is the demo section, I want to talk about what I like to refer to as the morning coffee dashboard. Now, we want to throw out the fancy words like unified experience, whatever, but the coffee dashboard, I like it because I can walk in the morning, take a look at my entire ecosystem, and immediately see if something is red, something needs to change, and pivot my day based off of that experience and what I need to do. So before too much further, I'm actually going to switch back over to the demo now and take a look at the Veeam Data Cloud architecture. So as you see, overview, we have all of our applications in one sort of unified view. You can kind of get baseline information, how many tenants I have here, what's being protected, what are my subscriptions, but what we really care about to start with is our dashboard. And you might be thinking, yeah, this is a lot of data, but it's covering the entire ecosystem, and you can cut this down to what makes sense for your business type. So if you are the Salesforce administrator, you can come in here and immediately cut the data by Salesforce, see the tenants associated with that. Say that you're only in charge of regions that are in the US. So you're going to look at all resources inside the US, and you can immediately see if there are errors or things that you need to come in here and double click. And you might see something here like all of a sudden, who is this Corinne person doing all of these backups and managing Salesforce? She's not in Salesforce. You can come over to activity and get your restore session logs. What are they doing? You can check your audit logs, say who's changing your backups, who's modifying anything. On default, you can limit the user's control to only be able to restore or to be able to do something only in Salesforce or only that through our users at the top here and roles. But it's always good to give yourself a quick check. You can even cut this data by the type of actors and actions that they've taken so you can kind of keep track. If you're really interested in like a scenario that might happen, say you have a 3-guy help desk team, and for some reason, 2 of your guys always seem overworked, you can come in here and check to see when's the last time the other restore admin has logged in to do any work, just as an example. It's very easy to see that here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Microsoft 365 platform to kick it off. I'm going to log in here to our system engineer account. And as you can see, we're presented with another dashboard. This dashboard actually cuts the data specific to the Microsoft 365 backups, but we don't just pull data from the on-premises like backups from our side. We actually pull the data from the ecosystem, the Microsoft 365 cloud itself. This is most prevalent when you can see right here, the amount of storage being used by this user is not the amount of storage necessarily being used within the backup, but this is how much the user is using within production. So you might be able to quickly see, okay, maybe Sharon is using 20 terabytes in her OneDrive. You might have a conversation about, okay, what does she have stored there? Maybe it's better to be on a SharePoint site, or maybe she's storing redundant data and she may not know. This could be a way to help save you some money within the cloud ecosystem. Another interesting side is over here, we can say that we have this many users protected, and then it automatically knows how many users are not protected. So we'll go out whenever we perform the backup and get an entire list of the users that are in the organization and let you know. And this might be by design, they might be development accounts or things like that. You can immediately see that this is how many users have not been put into some type of backup policy and that they're not just being missed. The search feature here allows us to get really granular. So our advanced search side, this is very comparable to, say, an e-discovery like search. So if you have to come in high level for names, files, dates, whatever it might be to pull back a compliance check, you can do that immediately from here. I'm going to graze over the next couple just because they look a lot the same, but you can see this data matches more closely with, say, the Azure SQL instance or the Azure file instance. And then we have our policies, which are directed towards those applications. Now, Salesforce, like I was saying, presents a new interesting level, and we'll click in here and take a look at our different policies and what that means for the Salesforce ecosystem. So to start with, we can see we have all of these records were backed up, and we can double click on those immediately, or we can just see how this changes over time, how many things were deleted, how many things were updated. And we see like this massive scale on the back end get deleted maybe all at once. You might be able to get ahead of potential tickets that might start flooding in down the line. And it could be something as simple as accidentally creating an archive policy that deletes anything older than maybe a year. And you're thinking, oh, nothing needs to be after a year. But you've only been working with Salesforce for maybe a year and all of a sudden things start dropping off. You're going to get a big view of what that looks like immediately. These policies allow you to not only create the traditional backup policy for the objects inside of Salesforce, but you can define what type of objects are archived automatically. So you're not paying those extra fees. And as an example, I created a policy that if it's not deleted and the subject contains the word cat, then I'm automatically going to archive that. Now, there's a lot more that you can do on a Salesforce integrated level, but there are tons of fields that you can play back on. Let's take a look at this and what it looks like from a Salesforce perspective itself. So now I'm inside of Salesforce. I'm going to check out the edge razors, and you might see a lot of these seem like default tabs, but one that I've added in custom, and I made this an organization-wide change, is I added in archive records. Archive records is going to be our back click into the Veeam ecosystem to say, hey, I made this case and it's got the subject cat, but I need this back like immediately. I have a customer on the line, there's something going on. I can click on that directly from here and hit restore. If I'm curious to see if there's other cases or I want to do a multi-case restore, you could do a multi-selection and hit restore directly from this tab. And it's super customizable. So from the actual plugin, so if you've noticed, we've changed a little bit of the heading to be the Veeam Data Cloud side now, and we're inside of the getting starting to the setup, and then the page layouts is where it's at. So underneath each of these page layouts, you can change the type of views that are associated in the parent view down to the child view and objects inside of there. So maybe it doesn't make sense to always have the industry in a high level case view because I don't care. I can see that on the account as it is. That's not pertinent. I want to see when was it deleted, how long was it deleted, or something of that nature. And that's really customizable from this point. All right. So that was the demo. And I want to remind everyone, if you have questions, we're going to be wrapping up here very shortly. I like to keep these nice and tight so you can get the best consumption. I will be looking here in just a moment at those questions. So please, please get those in so we can get them answered. Well, them meaning me for you. So let's double click on the ending here. I just want to give you guys a view. We do have some discounts going on. These are the current pricing models for the SaaS platform, for the Microsoft SaaS platform. If you're interested, we can go into more of that. If you liked something that you were seeing and you kind of want to spend a little bit more time on those screenshots, this actually allows you to click through yourself, through our platform, through our applications, even through like a restore process to see what that looks like and feels like before having to even talk to any kind of representative, which is really nice, especially when you're trying to bring this to a team, like, hey, does this even look like something we want to talk further about? And the next steps here is just more information. If you want some updated guides on the pricing, I'm definitely not a licensed expert. I'm still more the technical side of the house, but if you get questions in the chat, I will make sure we get some representatives back with you on that. I'm going to click over here on the chat and see if I can read through some of these questions. So we have a question here from Scott. How easy is it to restore a single file if someone deletes one? So interesting about that, we actually have a very diverse restore policy here. And I'll just pick on Microsoft 365 because it is my core product in line, but all of the other applications do that. If I click on our restore side, I can click across whether it's an Outlook, and since you said file, let's double click on the OneDrive side of the house. And if I go into any of these folders, I can either restore this entire folder, I can restore the entire user, or I can restore the specific file. And not just the specific file, but if there's versions of this file, I could get as granular as that single version of that file. We have some more questions here, and now they're starting to really flood in for us. Let me see if I can get these answered. I think I check it when I want to say it's answered. Is it possible to complete restoration tests with reports to prove the backup integrity during an audit? So we actually have a lot of activity monitoring. Anytime you come in here, and even if you don't complete the restore, like you just initiate the restore, which is really good for tracking and additionally audit purposes, we can see here that this restore session was created. But if something was complete, we can prove that this was complete and download in the background. And you can even get the event details to show the ID, the path that it was taken, and then you can also show where it was restored to in any kind of testing scenario to help prove that compliance. Let's see here. Can we back up? So there's another great question here. So can we back up multiple Salesforce instances and accounts? So that's one really cool thing about having it inside of the Veeam Data Cloud. You could have 2 tenants, you could have 1 tenant, you could have 500 tenants. As long as you have the permissions to get in with an account, you're able to back those up, and it's able to see from the same interface here. We can see already that we have, I think, a handful of different tenants here, and we have these across regions for our demo tenants. Let me see. We had a question about retention and Leonardo. Okay. Is it possible to complete restoration tests with reports? Oh, we already got that one. I think the other question came through. They start going down as I click on them. So we had another great question here from Leonardo, which is looking for Veeam backup for Microsoft 365 on premises. What are the principal differences? So that's a great call out. We do have multiple versions of consumption for the product itself. We have the on-premises installation where you manage the storage, you manage the security, you manage everything with there. Our Veeam Data Cloud, which allows you to kind of take away some of that footprint in the back-end workload of making sure the backups happen while still having that redundancy, which is what we saw here. And then we also have a partner ecosystem that allows have managed service providers or just helping you set things up, so professional services and things like that. The main differences is the amount that you want to control. The big difference between your on-premises solution and going with the Veeam Data Cloud is there are actually two different types of Microsoft 365 backups. There's what we sort of refer to loosely as the traditional style backup, which the traditional style backup is using the export APIs to the graph. We also have the option with Microsoft and our partnership to be able to use the storage, so the Microsoft backup storage. This sits a little bit closer alongside the Microsoft 365 platform, but the advantage there is it's a lot faster. You lose 50 terabytes, you could probably have that back within a day versus having a traditional backup. So sometimes a combination of both is best, but that's only available through the Veeam Data Platform with some of our agreements. I have one more question that I have here, and unfortunately, we'll go ahead and kick it off here with George as our last question. Can dynamics be included? And we don't have an official something I can say right now, but I can tell you it's on the roadmap, and I'm hoping to have it sometime this year for dynamics. If you want to have some type of NDA conversation, go ahead and message in the chat. We can try to get someone back online with whoever your customer representative is to make sure you get the updated information there. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone's questions and participation today. I think this was the most questions I've ever had coming in through here, so I thank you guys for that, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.